In 1952, a miner's wife in Barnsley named Edith Greenwood fed a family of 6 on rationing that had barely loosened since the war. She had a cold stone larder, a single shelf of jars, and a way of making a Sunday joint stretch to Thursday that her own mother had taught her in 1919. She never wasted a crust. She never threw away a bone. And when she died in 1991, her granddaughter found a recipe book in the dresser drawer with 40 years of pencil notes in the margins, every one of them about how to make a little go a long way. Number 9 on this list is something your nan did with a heel of stale bread that turned it into a pudding the whole family fought over. Number 5 cost nothing at all and meant she never bought stock in her life. And number 1 is the habit that sat underneath everything else. The reason a working class woman with almost nothing could keep a family fed, warm, and proud. These weren't tricks. This was just how you ran a kitchen. Hit subscribe, because in the next 20 minutes I'm going to walk you through the forgotten pantry skills that kept British families going when money was tight, and show you exactly how much they'd save you today. Let us count down the 12 forgotten British pantry tricks your nan used when money was tight. Number 12. Keeping a dripping jar by the stove. Every kitchen in Britain had one. A white enamel basin or an old jam jar that sat at the back of the cooker. And every time a joint came out of the oven, the fat was poured off and saved. Beef dripping from the Sunday roast, bacon fat from the morning fry-up, the lot. It set into a pale, soft spread that went on bread with a pinch of salt, fried the eggs on Monday, roasted the potatoes on Tuesday, and started the gravy on Wednesday. Your nan never bought cooking oil. She didn't need to. The fat from the meat she'd already paid for did every job a bottle of sunflower oil does today. And dripping on toast was a tea-time treat that cost absolutely nothing. A bottle of cooking oil now costs around £2.50, and most households get through one every few weeks. Beef dripping at the supermarket is sold as a premium product, at nearly £2 for a small tub, marketed to people who've discovered that roast potatoes cooked in it taste better than anything else. Your nan knew that in 1952. She got it free, scraped from the bottom of the roasting tin. Nothing the animal gave up was ever wasted, and the jar by the stove was the proof. Number 11. Turning sour milk into something useful. Before every fridge had a digital thermometer and a use-by date stamped on the bottle, milk went off. It was a fact of life. But your nan didn't pour it down the sink. Slightly soured milk was the secret to the lightest scones and soda bread you ever tasted, because the acid in it reacted with the bicarbonate of soda and made everything rise soft and tender. She'd take a pint that was just on the turn, mix it with flour and a spoon of bicarb, and 20 minutes later, the kitchen smelled of warm soda farls. Nothing bought, nothing wasted. A pint of milk that most people today would tip straight down the drain became a tray of scones for the price of a handful of flour. The waste charity WRAP estimates British households pour away nearly 500,000 pints of milk a day. Your nan would have been horrified. To her, milk on the turn wasn't rubbish. It was tomorrow's baking, already half done. Number 10. The second boiled tea leaves. Tea was expensive and rationed within living memory, so nobody made a single pot and threw the leaves away. Your nan used loose leaf in a warmed pot, drank the first strong brew, and then topped the same leaves up with fresh hot water for a second, lighter pot in the afternoon. The leaves had plenty left to give. When the leaves were finally spent, they didn't go in the bin either. Damp tea leaves were scattered on the carpet before sweeping, because they trapped the dust and stopped it rising. The rest went on the roses in the garden where they fed the soil. A box of tea bags now costs around £3, and most families get through one a week without a second thought. Your nan made the same quantity of tea last twice as long, and what was left over cleaned her floors and fed her flowers. One handful of leaves did 3 jobs before it was done. Nothing in that kitchen had only one purpose. Number 9. Stale bread into bread and butter pudding. This is the one I mentioned at the top. No loaf was ever thrown away in your nan's house, no matter how hard it had gone. The heels, the crusts, the forgotten end of yesterday's loaf, they all went into a tin and waited. And when there was enough, she made the pudding the whole family fought over. She'd butter the stale slices, layer them in a dish with a scatter of sultanas and a sprinkle of sugar, pour over a custard of milk and 1 egg, and bake it until the top went crisp and golden and the middle turned soft as a sponge. A pudding that fed 6 people, made almost entirely from bread that would otherwise have been binned. The same trick worked savory. Stale bread blitzed into breadcrumbs for fish cakes and stuffing. Hard heels fried in dripping for the bottom of a soup. A British family in the 1950s threw away almost no bread at all. Today, the average household bins the equivalent of a whole loaf every week. At £1.40 a loaf, that's over £70 a year, straight in the caddy. Your nan turned that same waste into the best pudding of the week. Number 8, growing herbs and forcing rhubarb for free flavour. A shop-bought packet of fresh herbs costs nearly £1 and goes slimy in the fridge within days. Your nan had a windowsill of mint, parsley and chives in old margarine tubs, snipped fresh whenever she needed them, costing nothing after the first packet of seeds. And in the corner of the yard, under an upturned bucket or an old galvanized bin, she forced her rhubarb. Covering the crowns in the dark made the stalks grow long, pink and tender, weeks earlier than they'd manage outdoors. A glut of rhubarb meant crumbles, jam and stewed fruit for pudding all spring, from a plant that came back every single year and cost nothing once it was in the ground. This is the corner of Yorkshire they actually call the Rhubarb Triangle, where they've been forcing rhubarb in dark sheds for over a century. Your nan was doing the same thing in her backyard with a bucket. Free flavour, year after year, from a plant most people today wouldn't know how to grow. Number 7, the meat safe and the art of making one joint last. Before fridges were in every home, your nan had a meat safe, a small cupboard with a fine mesh door that kept the flies off and let the air move, usually in the coldest corner of the larder. And inside it she practiced the real skill, making one joint stretch across a week. Sunday was the roast, served hot with all the trimmings. Monday was the cold cuts, sliced thin with bubble and squeak made from the leftover veg. Tuesday, the last of the meat went into a shepherd's pie or a hash. And Wednesday, the bone went into the pot for stock. One joint, 4 dinners, not a scrap wasted. A family today buys a different protein for every meal. A chicken here, a pack of mince there, a salmon fillet for Thursday. Your nan bought one good joint at the weekend and made it carry the family halfway through the week. The skill wasn't in the cooking. The skill was in the planning, knowing on Sunday exactly what Wednesday's dinner would be. Number 6, bottling and preserving the autumn glut. When the greengrocer had a glut, prices dropped through the floor, and your nan bought in bulk and preserved the lot. Kilner jars of plums and pears in syrup, pickled onions and red cabbage for the winter, chutney from the windfall apples and the last green tomatoes that would never ripen, jam from whatever fruit was cheapest that week. She spent one hot Saturday in September up to her elbows in boiling sugar, and in return, she had a shelf of jars that fed the family right through to spring. Fruit in January, when the shops had nothing but expensive imports, came from a jar she'd filled in autumn for pennies. A jar of decent jam now costs over £2. A jar of chutney closer to £3. Your nan made a dozen jars in an afternoon from fruit that was practically being given away. And every jar she filled was a jar she never had to buy. The autumn glut wasn't a chore. It was the supermarket shop for the next 6 months, done in a single day. Now, here's where you have to stop and notice something. Every one of these tricks so far has the same thing at its heart. Nothing had a single use. The dripping cooked 3 meals. The tea leaves cleaned the floor. The stale bread became pudding. The bone became stock. Your nan didn't think about food the way we do. We buy a thing, we use it for one job, we throw away what's left. She bought a thing and asked it to work until there was genuinely nothing left to give. A chicken wasn't a meal. It was 4 meals and a pot of stock and dripping for the week. That wasn't meanness. It was respect for the money it cost, for the animal that gave it, and for the work that went into earning the wage that paid for it. We didn't lose these tricks because they stopped working. We lost them because we got just rich enough to stop bothering, and just busy enough to call waste convenience. The waste charity WRAP puts the cost of the food the average British family throws away at around £1,000 a year. Your nan would have fed a household for months on what we scrape into the bin. Number 5. The stock pot that never went cold. This is the one that cost nothing at all. On the back of your nan's stove sat a pot, and into it went everything. The chicken carcass from Sunday, the bacon rind, the outer leaves of the cabbage, the ends of the carrots, the onion skins that gave the broth its golden color, a handful of barley or split peas to thicken it. It simmered away whenever the stove was lit anyway, costing nothing extra in fuel, and it gave the family soup, gravy, and the base of 100 dinners. She never bought a stock cube in her life. She never needed to. The bones and peelings most people throw away were, to her, the foundation of half of everything she cooked. A box of stock cubes costs over £1.50 now, and a carton of fresh stock closer to £2. Your nan made better stock than either, from ingredients she'd already paid for and would otherwise have thrown away. The pot on the back of the stove was the cheapest, richest, most useful thing in the kitchen, and it ran on rubbish. Number 4. Knowing every cheap cut at the butcher. Your nan never bought a fillet steak in her life, and she ate better than most of us do. She knew the cuts the butcher could barely give away, and she knew exactly what to do with them. Oxtail, slow cooked until it fell off the bone into the richest stew you ever tasted. Brisket, braised for hours until it carved like butter. Scrag end of lamb for a hot pot. A pig's trotter to give body to a broth. Liver and kidney for next to nothing. These were the cheapest things in the shop because nobody else wanted the bother of cooking them slow. But your nan had time and a low oven, and she turned what the butcher couldn't sell into the meals her family remembered all their lives. Today, those same cuts have been rediscovered by expensive restaurants, who charge a fortune for slow-cooked oxtail and braised brisket and call it nose-to-tail dining. Your nan was doing nose-to-tail in 1952 because it was all she could afford. The cheap cut was never worse. It just asked for patience that we've stopped being willing to give. Number 3. The larder shelf of dry goods bought in bulk. Your nan's larder always had a sack of flour, a tin of dried pulses, a jar of oats, and a store of sugar bought when it was cheap. She never ran to the shop for a single missing ingredient, because the foundation of every meal was already on the shelf. Lentils, split peas, barley, dried beans, the cheapest, most filling food in Britain, and the backbone of soups and stews that fed a family for pennies a portion. A bag of dried lentils today costs under £1 and makes a dozen meals. A single ready meal costs 4 or 5 times that and feeds one person once. Your nan understood the maths without ever writing it down. The full larder wasn't hoarding, it was security. The knowledge that whatever happened to the wage that week, the family would eat. Number 2, making your own bread and never buying a cake. Your nan baked. Not as a hobby, not for a photograph, but because a homemade loaf cost a fraction of a bought one, and a homemade cake cost almost nothing at all. A bag of flour, a bit of fat, some sugar, an egg, and the oven that was already warm from the dinner. Out came bread, scones, fruitcake, parkin, whatever the week called for. The shop-bought equivalent was a luxury most families simply didn't pay for when they could make it better at home. A Victoria sponge from a bag of basics that cost pennies. A fruit loaf that lasted a week in the tin. Bread still warm enough to melt the dripping. A decent loaf from a bakery now costs over £3, and a celebration cake can run to £20 or more. Your nan made both for the cost of the raw ingredients and the heat of an oven that was on anyway. Baking wasn't an indulgence in that kitchen. It was simply cheaper than the alternative, and it tasted of home in a way nothing off a shelf ever has. Number 1. Planning the whole week before spending a penny. This is the habit that sat underneath every other trick on this list. Your nan didn't wander the shops and buy what caught her eye. She sat down, usually on a Friday when the wage came in, and she planned Sunday's joint and what Monday and Tuesday would make from the leftovers. Which night was the cheap mince? Which night was the stockpot soup? Which night was eggs because they were what was left? She knew before she spent a single penny exactly what every meal of the week would be, and she shopped to that plan and nothing more. There were no impulse buys, no half-used packets going slimy in the back of the fridge, no wondering at 6 o'clock what on earth to make for tea. The plan was the thing. The plan was what turned a small wage into a fed family, with money still left for the savings tin. We've been sold the idea that this kind of planning is restrictive, that freedom means buying whatever you fancy, whenever you fancy it. But your nan's plan wasn't a prison. It was the opposite. It was how she stayed in control of the money, instead of letting the money control her. The average British family wastes around £1,000 of food a year because they shop without a plan. Your nan wasted almost nothing because she knew on Friday what she'd be eating the following Thursday. That was the real trick. Not the dripping jar, or the stockpot, or the cheap cut at the butcher, though all of those mattered. The real trick was the planning, the daily careful, unglamorous business of deciding what you could afford and then living inside it. Edith Greenwood fed 6 people through years when there was barely enough to go round, and she did it not by magic, but by sitting down every Friday with a stub of a pencil and a clear head. Here's my challenge. This week, before you do the big shop, sit down and plan it. Every meal, Sunday to Saturday. Use what's already in the cupboard first. Buy only what the plan needs. Then, at the end of the week, look in your bin and see how much less is in there. Tell me in the comments which of these your own nan used to do. The dripping jar, the stockpot, the Sunday joint that lasted till Wednesday. Tell me if your family still does any of it, or if it stopped with her, because this isn't a video about going without. This is a video about a generation who knew exactly what they had, used every last bit of it, and never once called it hardship. They called it running a house, and they were better at it than we will ever be. Drop your nan's best trick in the comments. I read every one. I'll see you next week.